I did not scream. I did not cry. I smiled like a five-star pro and slid two key cards across the marble. In that 1 second, I realized the lobby had cameras and the truth had a timestamp. My husband thought he was checking into a suite for a work trip. He did not know I owned the access, the records, and now, the ending. When he finally whispered my name, I ruined him politely. "Hope you enjoyed your stay. Sir, my name is Sienna Rogers, and I am 37 years old. If you ask anyone in Providence, Rhode Island, they will tell you that the Riverton Slate Hotel does not simply function. It performs, it breathes, it anticipates, and that is because I am the one conducting the breath. As the operations manager, I do not merely oversee the front of house. I curate an ecosystem of seamless luxury where the impossible is standard and mistakes are a foreign language. I have spent 15 years in hospitality, turning my spine into steel and my smile into a weapon of mass de-escalation. I can calm a screaming celebrity who has trashed a penthouse suite without blinking. I can reorganize an entire wedding banquet in 45 minutes when a pipe bursts in the ballroom, and the bride will never know her shoes were wet. I am the calm in the center of the hurricane. I am the woman who fixes things. The lobby of the Riverton Slate is my stage. It is a cavernous, beautiful expanse of polished marble and dark mahogany, smelling faintly of white tea and old money. The chandelier above the center island is not just a light fixture, it is a cascade of 3,000 individual crystals, each one catching the late afternoon sun and scattering it across the floor like diamonds. I know exactly where the light hits at 4 in the afternoon. I know which floorboard in the hallway near the elevators creaks if you step on it with too much weight. I know everything. It was a Tuesday in November. The air outside was biting, that specific New England chill that cuts through wool coats and turns cheeks pink. But inside, the temperature was a perfect 72 degrees. The lobby was humming with the low, polite murmur of business travelers and couples seeking refuge from the wind. I was standing behind the reception desk, not because I had to, but because I liked to keep my hands on the pulse of the shift change. My front desk agent, a young man named Leo, who was still learning the art of invisibility, was struggling with a printer jam. I stepped in, my movements fluid and practiced, and cleared the tray in 4 seconds. I remember the sound of the revolving doors engaging. It is a specific heavy thud, followed by the soft whir of the motor. It is the sound of arrival. I did not look up immediately. I was straightening a stack of keycard sleeves, ensuring the edges were perfectly aligned. Attention to detail is not a preference for me. It is a religion. When I finally lifted my eyes, the smile was already there. It is a muscle memory. That smile. It conveys warmth without intimacy, service without servitude. Then the world stopped. It did not stop in the romantic, breathless way poets write about. It stopped like a car crash. It stopped with the violent screech of metal on metal, the sudden silence that follows a catastrophe. 2 people had just walked in from the cold. The man was wearing a charcoal wool coat I had picked out for his birthday 2 years ago. He had a scarf wrapped loosely around his neck, the cashmere one I had dry cleaned last week. He looked distinguished. He looked handsome. He looked like Grant Caldwell, the man I had woken up next to that very morning. He was not alone. Linked to his arm, tight and possessive, was a woman. She was stunning in a way that felt aggressive. She wore a cream coat that looked expensive and heels that clicked sharply against my marble floors. Her hair was a glossy sheet of dark silk, and she was laughing at something he had just said. It was an intimate laugh, the kind you share when you have secrets together. Grant was looking down at her, and the expression on his face was one I knew well. It was the look he used to give me when we were 25 and broke and thinking about how we would conquer the world. They were walking straight toward the desk. For 1 terrifying second, my brain refused to process the visual data. It tried to reject the reality. Perhaps he was here for a meeting I had forgotten. Grant was a consultant. He had meetings. He had clients. Maybe this woman was a client. A very friendly, very touchy client who clung to his bicep like she was afraid he would float away. But clients do not lean into your shoulder like that. Clients do not whisper in your ear while you walk through a hotel lobby. My heart hammered against my ribs, a trapped bird desperate to escape, but my feet stayed planted. I could feel the blood draining from my face, rushing away from my skin to protect my vital organs, leaving me cold and hollow. I wanted to vomit. I wanted to scream. I wanted to vault over the marble counter and tear them apart with my bare hands. I did none of those things. Instead, I locked my knees. I forced air into my lungs. I engaged the core muscles of my stomach. I became the operations manager. Sienna the wife was screaming in a burning room inside my head. But Sienna the manager stood tall, her spine straight, her hands resting gently on the cool granite of the desktop. They reached the counter. The woman stepped up first. She was even more beautiful up close, with skin that looked like it had never known a day of stress. She smelled of vanilla and something musky, a perfume that probably cost $300 an ounce. She did not look at me. She looked through me, to her. I was furniture. I was a function. I was the help. Reservation for Caldwell, she said. Her voice was smoky, confident. It was the voice of a woman who gets what she wants. At the sound of his name, Grant looked up from his phone. He had been checking a message, avoiding eye contact with the staff as most guests do, but the name Caldwell hung in the air between us. He lifted his head. Our eyes met. I watched the color leave his face. It was fascinating, in a horrific, clinical way. It happened in an instant. One moment, his cheeks were flushed from the cold and the excitement of his affair. The next, he was gray, ash gray. His eyes went wide, the pupils blowing out until they were black holes swallowing the panic. His mouth opened slightly, but no sound came out. It was as if someone had reached around to the back of his neck and yanked the power cord out of his chassis. He froze. He stopped breathing. He stopped existing as a sentient human being and became a statue of pure, unadulterated terror. I knew that look. I had seen it on guests who realized they had forgotten their passports. I had seen it on executives who realized they had missed $1 million meeting. But I had never seen it on my husband. He knew. In that split second, he knew everything was over. My training took over. It was a defense mechanism, a shield of professional armor that snapped into place to protect me from the devastation. I did not blink. I did not falter. I widened my smile by a fraction of an inch. It was not a happy smile. It was a customer service smile. It was a predator's smile. I turned my gaze to the computer screen. My hands hovered over the keyboard. They did not shake. I would not let them shake. "Welcome to the Riverton Slate," I said. My voice was steady. It sounded like my voice, but it came from a great distance, as if I were speaking through a long tunnel. "Let me just pull that up for you." I typed his name. Caldwell. The system hummed. The reservation appeared on the screen. I read the details, and each line of text was a fresh stab wound in my chest. Guest name Grant Caldwell. Room type Executive Harbor Suite. Duration 3 nights. Notes: champagne on arrival. Rose petal turn-down service requested for night 2. The Executive Harbor Suite. It was one of our most expensive rooms. It had a panoramic view of the river, a soaking tub big enough for 2, and Italian linens that cost more than my first car. He had booked it for 3 nights. 3 nights. He had told me this morning that he was flying to Chicago for a conference. He had kissed me on the forehead. He had packed his bag. I had made him coffee. And he had driven 20 minutes downtown to sleep with this woman in my hotel. The audacity of it was breathtaking. It was almost impressive in its stupidity. Did he think I would not see the manifest? Did he think I was off today? Or was he so arrogant, so drunk on his own deception, that he simply forgot I existed in the one place where I was queen? I looked at the payment method on file. My stomach dropped. Visa ending in 4589. It was our joint account, the card we used for groceries, the card we used for vet bills, the card we were using to save for the renovation of the master bath. He was paying for his affair, for the champagne, for the rose petals. With my money, with our future, I felt a cold, hard rage crystallize in my gut. It replaced the nausea. It was better than the nausea. Rage is fuel. Rage is clarity. I looked up from the screen. I looked at the woman, who was tapping her manicured nails on the counter. Impatient. She had no idea. She thought the delay was incompetence. She had no idea she was standing next to a dead man. Then I looked at Grant. He was vibrating. It was a subtle thing, a fine tremor running through his frame. He looked like he was about to faint. His eyes were pleading with me. They were screaming, silently, begging for mercy. Sienna, please. Sienna, don't. I ignored him. I was not his wife right now. I was the operations manager, and the operations manager had a procedure to follow. I see the reservation here. Mr. Caldwell, I said. I kept my tone perfectly pleasant, perfectly neutral. The executive harbor suite for 3 nights. Is that correct? Grant made a noise. It was a strangled, wet sound, like a mouse being stepped on. The woman answered for him. Yes, that is right, she said. She leaned in, brushing against his arm. Honey, are you okay? You look pale. She touched his forehead. He flinched as if she had burned him. I am fine, Grant croaked. His voice was an octave higher than usual. Just tired. Long day. We are all tired, I said. The double meaning hung in the air, sharp and invisible like a wire. I will just need an ID and the credit card on file for incidentals. This was the test. This was the moment. Grant stared at me. He knew I knew. He knew that I knew the card number by heart. He knew that if he handed me that card, he was sealing his own death warrant. But he had no choice. The woman was watching. The lobby cameras were watching. He reached into his coat pocket. His hand was shaking so badly that he struggled to grip the leather wallet. He pulled it out. He tried to extract the card and his driver's license, but his fingers were useless. Numb with panic, the wallet slipped from his grasp. It hit the marble counter with a slap, then slid off the edge and clattered onto the floor on my side of the desk. There was a silence, a heavy, suffocating silence. The woman frowned. Grant, what is wrong with you? She asked. Her voice tinged with annoyance now. I did not move to pick it up immediately. I let it lie there on the floor between us. I let him look at it. I let him realize how far he had fallen. Then, slowly, gracefully, I bent down. I picked up the wallet. The leather was warm from his body heat. It smelled of him. I opened it. I saw the picture in the clear plastic window. It was a picture of me. We were on a beach in mismatched swimsuits, laughing. I was 28. He was 29. We looked so happy. I closed the wallet. I did not look at the picture again. That version of me was gone. She had died the moment he walked through those revolving doors. I stood up. I placed the wallet gently on the counter. I swiped the credit card he had managed to pull out earlier. I typed in the authorization code. I made the keys. 2 of them. I placed the key cards on the marble. I slid them across the smooth surface until they rested right in front of his trembling hands. I looked him dead in the eye. I let the silence stretch for 1 second. 2 seconds. 3 seconds. I let him see the absolute zero in my gaze. I let him see that there was no forgiveness here, no scene to be made, no tears to be shed. There was only calculation. There was only the receipt. Here are your keys. Mr. Caldwell. I said softly. He could not breathe. He took the keys. His skin was clammy. And then I delivered the line. I said it with the professional warmth I had perfected over a decade and a half. I said it like a blade wrapped in velvet, cutting him open from throat to navel without spilling a drop of blood on my floor. Hope you enjoyed your stay. Sir. I used the past tense, enjoyed, because as far as I was concerned, his life as he knew it was already history. He stared at me, his eyes wet, his soul crumbling. Then the woman tugged on his arm, oblivious to the execution that had just taken place. Come on, baby, she said. Let's go up. Grant let himself be led away. He walked like a man marching to the gallows. He stumbled once near the elevator bank but caught himself. He did not look back. I watched them go. I watched the elevator doors close, sealing them inside together. I watched the numbers above the door climb. 1, 2, 3. I stood there for a moment longer, my hand resting on the cool marble. The lobby was still humming. The chandelier was still scattering light. The world was still turning. But my world had stopped. And now I had to restart it. I had to reboot the system. I turned back to my computer. I had work to do. I had a shift to finish. And I had a husband to dismantle, piece by piece. I turned away from the reception desk and signaled to Leo. I told him I had some inventory discrepancies to review in the back office and that he was in charge of the floor for the next hour. My voice was steady. A flat line of professional competence that gave away nothing. Leo nodded, oblivious, his mind likely already drifting to his dinner break. I walked across the marble floor, my heels clicking a rhythm that sounded too loud in my own ears. I passed the concierge desk, nodded at the bellman, and navigated the corridor that led to the executive offices. Every step was a battle. My legs felt heavy, as if I were wading through waist-deep water, but I kept my chin up and my shoulders back. I did not run. I did not rush. To run is to admit panic, and I was not panicking. I was executing a protocol. I reached my office door, unlocked it with a steady hand, and stepped inside. I closed the door. I turned the lock. I engaged the deadbolt. Then, I looked at my watch. It was 4:17 in the afternoon. I gave myself exactly 1 minute. I moved to the center of the room, away from the desk, away from the windows where the staff might see me. I wrapped my arms around my waist, holding my own ribcage together because it felt like it was splitting open. A sound tore itself from my throat, a low, guttural noise that was half sob, half growl. My knees buckled, but I refused to hit the floor. I bent over, gasping for air, staring at the fibers of the carpet. The pain was physical. It was a sledgehammer to the sternum. It was the nausea of vertigo. The realization that the ground I had stood on for 7 years was actually a trapdoor. I thought of his hand on her back. I thought of the way he looked at her. I thought of the morning coffee he had made me, the lie he had told so easily, the kiss he had planted on my forehead before leaving to meet his lover. 50 seconds. I let the tears come, hot and stinging, blurring my vision. I let my hands shake. I let the hatred boil up, toxic and black, mixing with the grief until I could taste bile in my mouth. I wanted to smash the framed photo on my desk. I wanted to throw the crystal vase against the wall. 10 seconds. I took a deep breath. I held it. I exhaled slowly, pushing the air out through pursed lips. Time was up. I stood straight. I walked to the small vanity mirror I kept behind the door. I wiped the mascara smudge from under my left eye with a tissue. I fixed my hair. I checked my teeth. I adjusted my blazer. I opened the imaginary drawer in my mind. I took all the pain, the rage, the betrayal, and the heartbreak, and I shoved them inside. I slammed the drawer shut. I turned the key. I sat down at my desk. I woke up my computer. The screens flickered to life, glowing with the familiar blue interface of our property management system. I was no longer a wife. I was an investigator, and the Riverton slate was my crime scene. I pulled up the reservation again, but this time, I did not just look at the summary. I went into the change logs. Every keystroke in our system is recorded. Every modification, every note, every view is stamped with a user ID and a time. I looked at the creation date. The booking had not been made today. It had not been a spur-of-the-moment decision born of a sudden, uncontrollable passion. It was created on October 14th at 2:30 in the afternoon. I stared at the date. October 14th. That was a Saturday. We had gone to the orchard that day. We had picked apples. We had taken a selfie with cider donuts. I remembered him stepping away to take a work call. He had walked toward the barn, phone in hand, looking serious. He had not been taking a work call. He had been booking a suite to sleep with another woman. He had been standing 50 feet away from me, surrounded by autumn leaves and happy families, planning his infidelity. The premeditation made my blood run cold. This was not a mistake. This was a campaign. I clicked deeper. I checked the rate code. Usually, personal bookings are under standard leisure rates or specific promotional packages. This booking was different. It was tagged under a corporate rate code. My brow furrowed. Grant was a consultant. He worked for himself. He did not have a negotiated corporate rate with the Riverton slate. I would have known. I would have approved it. I opened the profile associated with the booking. It was listed under a company called Crestline Linen and Decor. I had never heard of them. We had vendors for linens, massive companies that supplied thousands of sheets a week. We did not use a company called Crestline. Yet, here was a corporate profile, fully active in our system, guaranteeing the room and offering a 20% discount on the rack rate. Who authorized this profile? I checked the history of the profile itself. It had been created 6 months ago. The authorizing manager ID was used to override the credit check. I stared at the screen. The ID belonged to a former sales manager who had been fired for incompetence 4 months ago, or so I thought. Someone had used an old login, or perhaps Grant had charmed someone into setting this up before they left. It was an anomaly, a loose thread. I made a note of it. Next, I went to the folio instructions. There were 2 specific flags on the account, highlighted in red. Do not print folio. No email receipt. I laughed. A dry, humorless sound in the empty office. Of course, the classic cheater's toolkit. He did not want a paper trail. He did not want an email popping up on his phone while he was sitting on the couch next to me. He wanted the transaction to be invisible. But nothing is invisible in my hotel. I exported the entire log. I pulled the reservation history, the payment authorization token, the timestamps of when the keycards were cut, and the digital signature he had just provided at the desk. I saved it all. Then I opened the security suite. I have access to every camera in the building, except for the interior of the guest rooms and the restrooms, the lobby, the elevators, the hallways, the parking garage. They are all mine. I rewound the footage from camera 1, the main entrance. I watched the revolving door spin. I watched them walk in. I saw the way the wind caught her hair. I saw the way he leaned in to shield her from the draft. It was sickeningly chivalrous. I switched to camera 2. The high angle over the reception desk. This was the footage that mattered. This was the evidence of his state of mind. I watched myself on the screen. I looked small from this angle. Just a figure in a black blazer behind a massive slab of marble, but I looked calm. I saw Grant approach. I saw the moment he looked up. Even on the grainy security feed, his reaction was undeniable. He stopped. His shoulders seized. He took a half step back. As if physically repelled by the sight of me, he looked like a man who had walked into a firing squad. And I saw the woman. She was oblivious, smiling, tapping her foot. I saw the wallet drop. I saw his hand shaking. I clipped the video. I saved it in high definition. I labeled the file simply The Arrival. Then I switched to the elevator camera. They stepped inside. The doors closed. As soon as they were alone, Grant slumped against the wall. He put his head in his hands. He looked terrified. The woman Sloane, if I recalled the guest list correctly. Though I needed to verify her full identity, looked confused. She touched his arm. He pulled away. He was already unraveling. I saved that clip too. I created a new folder on my hard drive. I named it with a random string of numbers that looked like a system file. Something no one would think to open. I moved all the documents, the logs, and the videos into it. Then I encrypted the folder with a password that was 20 characters long. I plugged in a personal USB drive. I copied the encrypted folder to the drive. I ejected the drive and put it in my purse. Then I logged into my personal cloud storage account, one that Grant did not know existed, and uploaded a third copy there. Triples. Operations Management 101. If data does not exist in 3 places, it does not exist. My desk phone rang. I ignored it. Then my cell phone, sitting face up on the desk, lit up. The screen displayed a photo of Grant. It was a picture I had taken of him grilling steaks in our backyard last summer. He looked happy. He looked innocent. The name Grant Mobile flashed across the screen. I watched it ring. I did not touch it. I let it vibrate against the mahogany until it went to voicemail. 10 seconds later, it lit up again. Grant Mobile. He was in the suite now. He had probably locked himself in the bathroom, whispering frantically into the phone, trying to come up with a lie that could explain why he was checking into a local hotel with a woman while his wife checked him in. I let it ring. 2 minutes later, a different number appeared. Unknown. He was using the hotel phone, or perhaps he had borrowed her phone. I declined the call. Then a text message appeared on the lock screen. Sienna, please pick up. I can explain. It is a misunderstanding. I stared at the words. A misunderstanding. He had booked a suite 3 weeks ago under a fake corporate profile and brought a woman with lingerie in her bag to my workplace. But it was a misunderstanding. The gaslighting had begun. I picked up the phone. I did not call him back. I went into the settings. I found his contact. I scrolled down to the bottom. Block caller. I confirmed the action. Then I went to his text thread. Block. I went to WhatsApp. Block. I was not going to give him the satisfaction of a scream. I was not going to give him the opportunity to spin a web of lies that would make me question my own sanity. If I talked to him now, I might cry. I might scream. I might believe him. Silence was the only weapon I had that he could not counter. He was upstairs, trapped in a room I controlled, panic rising in his throat like bile. He did not know what I was doing. He did not know if I was calling the police, or burning his clothes, or weeping in the break room. The uncertainty would eat him alive. I checked the time. 4:45. I had been in the office for 28 minutes. I stood up. I smoothed my skirt. I picked up a stack of banquet event orders for next week that I needed to review. I needed to look busy. I needed to look normal. I unlocked the office door and stepped back out into the hallway. The hotel was still humming. The guests were still happy. I walked back toward the lobby. I saw Leo at the desk, handing a guest a map of the city. He looked up as I approached. Everything okay, boss, he asked. I smiled. It was the same smile I had given my husband. The smile that hid the knife. Everything is perfect. Leo, I said, just perfect. I stood at my station. I watched the elevator bank. I knew he was up there on the 4th floor, pacing the carpet, staring at his phone, waiting for a response that was never coming. I was not reacting anymore. I was building a case, and I had only just broken ground. I sat at the head of my dining room table. The surface was reclaimed oak, a piece we had bought together 3 years ago at an estate sale in Newport. We had argued over the price, then laughed about it over wine on the patio. Now, the only thing resting on the wood was a black expandable file folder and a glass of water that I had not touched in 40 minutes. Across the room, standing by the kitchen island like a sentry carved from marble, was Marissa Cole. Marissa has been my best friend since our sophomore year of college. She is a corporate crisis PR specialist, a woman who makes scandals disappear for Fortune 500 companies. She does not panic. She does not offer platitudes. When I had called her from the car, my voice trembling for the first time since the lobby, she had not asked, "Are you okay?" She had asked, "What is the ETA, and do you need the locks changed today or tomorrow?" She was wearing a black turtleneck and dark jeans, leaning against the granite counter with her arms crossed. Her eyes were fixed on the front door. She was the safety mechanism on a loaded gun. "He is going to try to spin this," Marissa said. Her voice was low, a quiet hum in the silence of the house. "He is going to try to make you feel crazy. He is going to tell you that you misunderstood what you saw." I ran my finger along the edge of the black folder. "I know." I said, "Do not let him set the narrative. Sienna, you have the floor. You hold the gavel." I nodded. I did not feel like a judge. I felt like someone who had just woken up during surgery, but I had the folder. Inside were the printouts of the reservation logs, the security stills, the payment authorization, and the folio notes. It was a paper trail of a murder, only the victim was our marriage. The sound of a car door slamming outside cut through the air like a gunshot. Marissa straightened up. She did not move toward the door. She stayed in the kitchen, visible but distant, a witness he could not ignore. I heard the key scratch against the lock. It fumbled once, then twice. His hands were shaking again. The door swung open. Grant stepped into the hallway. He looked wrecked. His tie was loosened, hanging askew around his neck. His hair, usually perfectly gelled, was disheveled where he had clearly run his fingers through it a dozen times. He still wore the charcoal coat. He looked at the empty coat rack, then at the living room, and finally, his eyes landed on me. He exhaled, a long, shaky breath, and closed the door behind him. He dropped his keys on the entry table. The sound was too loud. "Sienna," he started. He took a step forward, his hands coming up in a gesture of surrender. "Baby." Then he saw Marissa. He stopped dead. His eyes darted from me to her, and I saw the shift in his posture. The pleading husband vanished, replaced by a defensive, cornered animal. His jaw tightened. "I didn't know we had an audience," he said, his voice hardening. "This is a private conversation. Marissa." Marissa did not blink. She picked up her mug of tea and took a slow sip. "I am just here to make sure the conversation stays productive. Grant, pretend I'm not here." Grant turned back to me. He walked into the dining room, but he did not pull out a chair. He stood at the opposite end of the table. Looking down at me, he looked at the water glass. He looked at the black folder. He knew exactly what was inside it. "Sienna, listen to me," he said. His voice dropped to that persuasive, reasonable tone he used when he was negotiating a contract. "I know what it looked like today. I know how bad it seemed. But you have to let me explain. It is not what you think." I looked at him. I really looked at him. I searched his face for the man I had married. The man who had held my hand when my mother died. The man who had promised to build a life with me. I could not find him. All I saw was a stranger who owed me money and an explanation. I did not scream. I did not throw the water glass at him. I simply opened the folder. I pulled out the first sheet of paper. It was the reservation summary, highlighting the special requests. "It is not what I think," I repeated. My voice was calm, terrifyingly steady. It sounded like I was discussing a catering menu. "Then explain the no receipt request. Grant, explain why a man on a business trip, a man who claims to be innocent, specifically requested that no folio be printed and no email be sent to the address we share." Grant flinched. He licked his lips. That was standard for this client. They are very private. They deal with sensitive mergers. They didn't want a paper trail leading back to their accounts. So I put it on my card and was going to expense it later. It was about discretion. Sienna, not secrecy. He was good. He was very good. If I had been a different woman, or if I had not been a hotelier, I might have paused. I pulled out the second sheet. "The security still from the lobby entrance. The client," I said. "You mean Ms. Mercer Sloan Mercer?" He blanched. "How do you—" "I am the operations manager. Grant, I know everyone who sleeps under my roof. So, this sensitive client who requires absolute discretion, is that why she was holding your arm like she owned you? Is that why she whispered in your ear?" "She was nervous," Grant insisted. He leaned forward, placing his hands on the table, leaning into my space. "She has anxiety. She hates crowds. She was leaning on me for support." "Sienna, God, you are twisting everything. She is a consultant for the firm. We were there to prep for a negotiation in the morning." I stared at him. The lie was so lazy it was insulting. "To prep for a negotiation," I said flatly, "in the executive harbor suite. With rose petals on the turn-down order." "I didn't order rose petals," he shouted. The crack in his composure was showing. "That must have been the hotel. You guys always do that stuff for VIPs. I looked at the log in front of me. User entry, request specific, champagne on ice, rose petals on bed. I did not argue the point. I moved to the next piece of evidence. I had not printed this one, but the image was burned into my retinas. "Let us assume, for a second, that I believe you." I said, "Let us pretend I am naive enough to believe that you took a client to a romantic suite to discuss a merger. Tell me, Grant, why did your client pack a sheer lace teddy in her garment bag?" Grant froze. His mouth opened. then closed. I saw the bag. Grant. When the bellman took it, the zipper was not fully closed. I saw black lace. I saw silk. Since when do corporate consultants bring lingerie to a business strategy meeting? Is that the new dress code? The silence that followed was heavy, suffocating. He pulled his hands off the table and stood up straight, running a hand over his face. He looked toward the kitchen, toward Marissa, as if hoping she would intervene. She just stared back at him, her face a mask of stone. "You are being paranoid," he muttered, but the conviction was gone. "You are looking for reasons to blow this up." I stood up. The chair scraped against the floor. A harsh wooden shriek. "I am not looking for anything." I said, "I found it. You brought it to my front desk. You handed it to me." I walked around the table until I was standing 3 feet from him. I could smell him. He smelled like the cold air in his expensive cologne, the bottle I had bought him for Christmas. Underneath that, I could smell the sweat of his fear. "I am setting boundaries. Grant, right now." He looked at me, his eyes widening. "Boundaries, Sienna. Come on. We can talk about this. We can go to counseling. You are leaving tonight." I said, "What? No. This is my house too." "Not tonight, it isn't. You are going to pack a bag. You are going to leave. And from this moment forward, any communication between us goes through legal channels. I will text you the name of my attorney in the morning." "Attorney." He laughed. A high, incredulous sound. "Sienna, stop. You are reacting. You are in shock. We are not getting a divorce over a misunderstanding. We have been together for 7 years." He took a step toward me, reaching for my hand. 7 years. Sienna. Think about everything we have built. Think about the house. Think about us. You are going to throw 7 years of marriage away because of one awkward check-in. You are ending it like this. I let him touch my hand for a fraction of a second before I pulled it away, as if his skin were acid. The mention of the time 7 years hit me harder than anything else. 7 years of holidays. 7 years of taxes. 7 years of trusting that he was the one person in the world who had my back. He was trying to weaponize our history. He was trying to use my love for him as a bludgeon to silence me. I felt a tear prick the corner of my eye, but I willed it back. I would not cry in front of him. I would not give him that victory. I looked him in the eye. I lowered my voice until it was a whisper, forcing him to lean in to hear me. "I am not ending it because of the check-in. Grant, I am ending it because of the lie." "I am not lying," he shouted, his face turning red. I did not yell back. I delivered the sentence that I knew would dismantle him. The sentence that proved I was not just a jealous wife, but a professional who had done her job. "I have already verified your timeline. Grant." He went still, totally, completely still. I checked the system logs. I continued, my voice relentless. "You did not book that room today. You did not book it yesterday. You booked it on October 14th at 2:30 in the afternoon." I watched his throat work as he swallowed. "October 14th. Grant, we were at the apple orchard. Do you remember? You told me you had to take a call from a vendor. You walked away toward the barn. I took a picture of you. You looked so serious. I thought you were working hard for us. But you were standing there, 50 feet away from your wife, booking a suite to sleep with another woman." His face crumbled, the arrogant facade, the defensive anger, it all disintegrated. He looked like a child caught stealing. "It wasn't," he stammered. "It was premeditated. Grant, it was weeks in the making. You planned this. You planned to betray me while we were picking apples." He looked around the room, desperate, his eyes darting everywhere but at me. Then, the words slipped out, the fatal error, the truth he hadn't meant to speak. "It was supposed to be a different hotel," he blurted out. The air left the room. Marissa made a sharp intake of breath in the kitchen. I stared at him. He realized what he had said the moment the words hung in the air. He clapped a hand over his mouth, his eyes wide with horror. There it was, the confession. He hadn't denied the affair. He hadn't denied the planning. He had only regretted the logistics. I felt a strange sense of calm wash over me. It was the calm of absolute clarity. There was no misunderstanding. There was no client. There was only a man who had tried to cheat on his wife and had been incompetent enough to get caught. "So," I said softly, "you did not mean to hurt me. You just meant to hurt me at the Langham. Or was it the Omni Siena? I didn't mean—" "It does not matter," I interrupted. "It really does not matter." I turned away from him. I walked back to the head of the table and closed the black folder. The sound of the magnetic clasp snapping shut was the sound of a coffin closing. I looked at the clock on the wall. It was 5:45. "You have 20 minutes," I said. He stared at me, paralyzed. 20 minutes. "Grant, take what you need for 3 days. Do not touch the rest. We will arrange for a mover to get your things later. If you are not out the door by 6 o'clock, Marissa calls the police and we file a trespassing report. And since the house is in my name solely because of your credit issues 3 years ago, they will remove you." He looked at me, and for the first time, he seemed to realize who he was talking to. He wasn't talking to his wife. He was talking to the woman who ran the Riverton slate. He was talking to the manager who evicted drunk senators and handled rock stars. He looked at Marissa. She checked her watch and tapped the face of it. 19 minutes, she said. Grant made a noise, a sob of frustration, and turned on his heel. He stomped up the stairs. I stood there in the dining room and listened. I heard his heavy footsteps in the bedroom above us. I heard the closet door slide open. I heard the distinctive sound of a drawer being yanked out too hard. I did not move. I stared at the folder. 10 minutes passed, then 15. At 18 minutes, he came down the stairs. He was dragging his suitcase, the one we had bought for our honeymoon in Italy, behind him. He had his gym bag thrown over his shoulder. He stopped at the bottom of the stairs. He looked at me one last time. His eyes were red. He looked like he wanted to say something, an apology, an accusation, a plea. I did not look at him. I looked at the wall behind him. I refused to give him the engagement he wanted, Sienna. He whispered, "Leave your key on the table." I said. He stood there for another moment. Then, with a defeated slump of his shoulders, he dropped his house key on the entry table next to the folder. He opened the door. The cold night air rushed in, chilling the room. He walked out. I watched the door close. I heard the lock click. I heard his car engine start. I heard him back out of the driveway and drive away. Only then did my knees give out. I sank into the chair at the head of the table. The silence rushed back in, filling the space where he used to be. Marissa walked over from the kitchen. She placed a fresh mug of hot tea in front of me. She did not hug me yet. She knew I was still in manager mode, holding myself together with centrifugal force. "He admitted it," she said softly. "Yes," I said. "He admitted it." I reached out and touched the black folder. "Step 1 is done," I said to the empty room. "Now we proceed to step 2. The offices of Hart Vance and Sterling were located on the 14th floor of a glass tower that overlooked the financial district of Providence. It was a space designed to intimidate. The carpet was a shade of gray so deep it swallowed the sound of footsteps. The walls were lined with abstract art that looked like violence captured in oil paint. There were no family photos, no warm lighting, and absolutely no comfort. It was a place where marriages went to die, and Vivian Hart was the executioner. I sat in a leather chair that cost more than my first car, my hands folded in my lap. I was wearing my charcoal executive suit, the one I usually reserved for board meetings with the hotel owners. I was not here to cry. I was here to negotiate a contract termination. Vivian Hart walked in 3 minutes past the hour. She was a woman made of angles. Her hair was a sharp, asymmetrical bob that looked like it could cut glass. She wore a white silk blouse and black trousers that fit with military precision. She did not offer me coffee. She did not offer me sympathy. She sat down behind a desk that was essentially a slab of polished concrete and extended a hand for the black folder I had brought. I slid it across the desk. Vivian opened it. She adjusted her glasses, which were thick-rimmed and severe, and began to read. The room was silent, save for the rhythmic scratching of her pen as she made notes on a legal pad. She spent 10 minutes reading the reservation logs, the security timestamps, the folio notes, and the screenshot of the corporate profile I had flagged. When she finally looked up, her expression was unreadable. "This is thorough," she said. Her voice was dry, like sandpaper on stone. "Usually, clients come to me with weeping voicemails and lipstick stains. You have brought me a forensic audit of your husband's infidelity. I am an operations manager." I said simply, "Documentation is the only thing that matters in liability cases." Vivian nodded slowly. She closed the folder and placed her hand on top of it. "This is excellent. It proves the affair. It proves premeditation. It proves he used marital funds for the hotel room, which gives us immediate grounds to claim dissipation of assets. But, Sienna, I have to ask you the question that most smart women hate to answer." She leaned forward, her eyes locking onto mine. "Who controls the money?" I felt a flush of heat crawl up my neck. It was the shame of the competent woman who had dropped the ball in the most obvious way. "We share accounts," I said, "but Grant manages the day-to-day. He pays the mortgage, the utilities, the investments. I manage a hotel that generates $12 million a year in revenue. By the time I get home, I do not want to look at another spreadsheet. I trusted him. He was good with numbers." Vivian sighed. It was a sound of professional disappointment. "They are always good with numbers until they start subtracting," she said. She turned her monitor around so I could see it. "Log in," she ordered. I typed in our username and password for the main checking account. The screen loaded. The balance looked normal, healthy, even. There was $42,000 in the checking account. The savings account had another $150,000. We were comfortable. We were safe. Vivian picked up her mouse. "Do not look at the top line." "Sienna, the top line is the camouflage. Look at the flow." She began to scroll through the transaction history. She filtered the search parameters to show outgoing transfers over $500 for the last 12 months. At first, it looked standard. Mortgage payments, car lease payments, utility bills, credit card payoffs. Then, Vivian stopped scrolling. "What is this?" she asked, pointing a manicured finger at a line item dated September 4th. I leaned in. "Vendor reimbursement, CLD." The amount was $2,400. I frowned. "I do not know. Grant runs a consulting firm. He has overhead. Maybe it was for software or travel expenses he paid up front." Vivian clicked on the transaction to expand the details. It was a direct transfer to an external bank account, not a payment to a registered merchant. She scrolled down. August 3rd. Vendor reimbursement, CLD, $3,100. July 10th. Vendor reimbursement, CLD, $1,800. The pattern emerged like a hidden image in a magic eye poster. Every month, for the last year, there was a transfer. The amounts varied, but the label was always the same. CLD, I whispered. The letters triggered a memory. I closed my eyes, visualizing the computer screen in my office back at the hotel. The corporate profile Grant had used to book the suite. It was listed under Crestline Linen and Decor. Crestline Linen and Decor. I said aloud. CLD. Vivian looked at me sharply. What is that? It is the company name on the corporate profile he used to get the discount at the hotel, I explained, my voice tightening. I thought it was just a fake name he used to look legitimate, but these transfers, I did the math in my head. 2,000 here, 3,000 there, over 12 months. It added up to nearly $30,000. $30,000 of our money, sent to a company that I was fairly certain did not exist. Vivian began typing furiously. We need to find out who owns that receiving account, she said. If he is moving marital assets into a shell account, that is not just spending money on a mistress. That is fraud. That is hiding assets in anticipation of a divorce. She looked at me, and her expression had changed. The coolness was gone, replaced by the predatory focus of a hunter who has just smelled blood. Sienna, this changes the landscape, she said. An affair is messy. Dissipation of assets is legal theft. If we can prove he was funneling money out of the joint estate into a private account, we can go after everything. We can claim treble damages in civil court. We can freeze his assets. We can leave him with nothing but the suit on his back. She pulled a sheet of paper from her drawer and slid it toward me. I am going to recommend we bring in a forensic accountant immediately. She said, I work with a man named Marcus Thorne. He can find a penny dropped in the ocean. I want him to go through 5 years of your records, not just the bank accounts, the credit cards, the retirement funds, the tax returns. I stared at the paper. A forensic accountant. The words felt heavy. Criminal. Is that necessary? I asked. My voice small. Is it really that bad? Vivian stopped typing. She took off her glasses and set them on the desk. Sienna, look at the screen, she said softly. I looked. She pointed to a transfer from 2 days ago. Vendor reimbursement. CLD. $5,000. He transferred $5,000 out of your joint account the day before he checked into your hotel, she said. He was funding his escape plan with your paycheck. The realization hit me harder than the sight of the woman in the lobby. The infidelity was a betrayal of the heart. This was a betrayal of our survival. He had been stealing from me. He had been looking me in the eye over dinner, asking about my day, while he siphoned off the money I worked 60 hours a week to earn. I felt the anger return, but this time it was not the hot, reactive anger of the wife. It was the cold, calculating anger of the operations manager finding a thief in the cash drawer. Do it, I said. Vivian nodded. I will have the engagement letter drawn up. Thorne starts tomorrow. She leaned back in her chair. Now, I need to warn you about what comes next. Grant is going to realize he has been kicked out. He is going to realize his cash flow is about to be cut off. He is going to come back. I stayed silent. He will not come back screaming. Vivian continued. He will come back charming. He will try to gaslight you. He will tell you that the money was an investment that went bad. He will tell you he was trying to surprise you with a vacation home. He will tell you that he loves you and that 7 years is too much to throw away. He will try to get you to talk to him without a lawyer present. She paused, waiting for my reaction. He is very charming, I said. That is how he built his consulting business. He makes people feel like they are the only person in the room. Exactly, Vivian said. He will try to leverage that emotional capital. He will try to make you doubt your own memory. He will try to make you feel guilty for being cold or transactional. He will ask you to just sit down and talk. Husband to wife. I looked out the window. The city of Providence was spread out below me, gray and steel under the winter sky. I could see the roof of the Riverton slate in the distance. I thought about the way Grant had looked at me when he dropped the wallet. I thought about the lie he told about the rose petals. I thought about the $5,000 missing from our account. He had spent 7 years building a life with me, and then he had spent the last year selling it off piece by piece to fund a lie. I turned back to Vivian. My face was a mask of perfect porcelain calm. He does not get to talk, I said. Vivian raised an eyebrow. He already talked, I said. I tapped the screen where the transaction list was still glowing. He talked with money, and that is the only language I'm listening to now. Vivian smiled. It was the first time she had smiled since I entered the room. It was a sharp, dangerous smile. I think we are going to get along very well. Sienna, she said. She picked up her phone. I will call Thorne, she said. You go back to work. Keep your head down. Change your passwords. And if Grant shows up at the hotel, I stood up and smoothed the front of my blazer. I picked up my purse. If he shows up at the hotel, I said, I will treat him like any other guest who tries to check in with a declined credit card. I walked out of the office. The elevator ride down took 45 seconds. I watched the numbers count down. 14, 13, 12. With every floor that passed, I felt lighter. The grief was still there, a heavy stone in my gut. But the confusion was gone. I had a plan. I had a team. And I had a target. Grant Caldwell thought he was playing a game of hearts. He did not realize he had just sat down at a table where the currency was blood and bank routing numbers. And he was about to find out that the house always wins. The Riverton slate does not stop for heartbreak. It does not pause for divorce proceedings. It is a machine made of silk and steel, and it demands to be fed. For the next 3 days, I fed it. I threw myself into the operation with a terrifying intensity. I arrived at 6 in the morning and left at 9 at night. I inspected the housekeeping carts with a white glove. I reorganized the banquet scheduling system to optimize turnover times by 15%. I personally walked the VIP floor 3 times a day, adjusting floral arrangements by millimeters. My staff looked at me with a mixture of awe and fear. They knew something was wrong. Rumors travel faster than room service in a hotel, but they did not dare ask. To them, I was not a woman whose husband had just torched their marriage. I was a force of nature. I was the captain steering the ship through a storm, refusing to let even a drop of water touch the deck. Work became my anesthetic. When I was shouting orders to the kitchen about a late delivery of sea bass, I did not have to think about the empty side of my bed. When I was soothing a French diplomat whose suit had been wrinkled by the valet, I did not have to think about the forensic accountant currently dissecting my life. I was performing. I was excellent. I was hollow. On Friday morning, Graham Pritchard summoned me to his office. Graham is the owner of the Riverton Slate and the CEO of Asterline Hospitality. He is a man of 60 with the posture of a retired general and the eyes of a hawk. He built this hotel group from the ground up, and he respects only 2 things: loyalty and competence. I walked into his office with my notebook tucked under my arm, ready to discuss the quarterly revenue projections. "Sit down, Sienna," he said. He did not look at the spreadsheet I placed on his desk. I sat. The leather chair was cool against my back. Graham took off his reading glasses and folded them slowly. "I heard about Tuesday," he said. I stiffened. I had not told him. I had not told anyone at work. "I saw the security report," he continued. "Leo logged an incident regarding a disruptive guest in the lobby. I pulled the footage. My face burned. The humiliation was a physical heat rising from my collar. "I apologize, Graham," I said, keeping my voice level. "It was a personal matter. It was handled immediately. It will not affect the operation of the hotel." Graham raised a hand to stop me. "I know it was handled," he said. "I saw how you handled it. Most people would have caused a scene. You checked him in and collected payment. That is why you are sitting in that chair and he is not." He leaned forward. "I have flagged Grant Caldwell in the central booking system. Sienna, he is blacklisted from the Riverton Slate and all Asterline properties effective immediately. If he tries to step foot on the premises, security has been instructed to remove him for trespassing. You do not need to worry about looking over your shoulder while you are working." I felt a lump form in my throat. It was unexpected. I had braced myself for a reprimand, for a lecture on keeping domestic drama out of the workplace. Instead, I was being protected. "Thank you, Graham," I said softly. "That is not why I called you here," he said. He opened a drawer and pulled out a thick dossier. He slid it across the mahogany desk toward me. "Asterline is expanding. Sienna, we have acquired 2 new properties, one in Charleston and one in Savannah. They are historic renovations, high complexity, high luxury. We need a director of operations to oversee the launch and the ongoing management of the southern region." He looked me in the eye. "I want you to take it." I stared at him. The director of operations for the entire southern region. It was a massive promotion. It meant a significant raise, a seat at the corporate table, and most importantly, a reason to leave Providence. It was a ticket out of the city that was now haunted by the ghost of my marriage. It would mean travel. Graham said, "You would be on the road for 6 months. I will take it." I said, I did not hesitate. I did not need to think about it. Graham smiled. It was a rare, genuine smile. "Good. You have earned it. We will announce it on Monday. Take the weekend to breathe." "Sienna, you look like you are holding up the ceiling with your bare hands." I walked out of his office feeling lightheaded. The universe, it seemed, was offering me a trade. I had lost a husband, but I had gained an empire. I walked down the corridor toward my own office, my heels clicking on the floor with a renewed sense of purpose. I could do this. I could pack up the house, sign the divorce papers, and disappear to Charleston. I could reinvent myself in a city where no one knew Grant Caldwell. I reached my office door, I was already mentally drafting the email to my team, planning the transition. I opened the door, and the floor dropped out from under me. There were 2 people in my office. They were not hotel staff. They were wearing dark suits. They were standing by my desk. One of them, a woman with a severe bun and wire-rimmed glasses, was typing on my computer. The other, a man with a heavy build and a face like a closed fist, was going through my physical filing cabinet. "Excuse me," I said, my voice sharp. "This is a private office." The man turned. He did not look apologetic. He looked bored. "Sienna Rogers," he asked. "I am Sienna Rogers. Who are you?" "Corporate compliance," the woman said. She did not stop typing. "I am Sarah Jenkins. This is Mike Ross. We are conducting an emergency audit." Audit, I stepped into the room, my heart starting to hammer against my ribs. "We just passed our quarterly financial review last month. What is this about?" The woman stopped typing. She turned the monitor toward me. "This is not a general audit, Ms. Rogers," she said. "This is a targeted review of internal expense irregularities tied to your managerial credentials." I frowned. "That is impossible. I sign off on every invoice. My books are perfect." "Ms. Rogers," the man said, stepping forward, "we have flagged over $70,000 in waived room charges, comped banquet services, and redirected vendor payments over the last 18 months, all authorized by your unique user ID, all override codes entered from your terminal." I felt the blood drain from my face. $70,000. I walked around the desk. I looked at the screen. There was a list of transactions. Long columns of numbers. I saw the dates. I saw the authorization codes. User Schruggers, Authorization Manager Override. I scanned the details. June 12th, banquet room. Rental fee waived. Reason VIP courtesy. July 4th, catering invoice 4459. Rerouted to vendor Crestline linen. August 10th, executive suite, 3 nights, comped. I looked at the dates. June 12th. I was at a hospitality conference in Boston that day. July 4th. I was managing the fireworks gala on the roof. I hadn't been near my desk for 10 hours. But the login was mine. The password was mine. And then I saw it. The vendor name. Crestline Linen. The same shell company Grant had been funneling money to from our joint account. The room spun. I had to grip the edge of the desk to keep from falling. It was not just the bank account. It was not just the cheating. Grant had been using my login. He knew my password. Of course he knew it. I sometimes worked from home. I sometimes asked him to check my email for me when I was driving. He had my access. He had been logging into the hotel system, likely from his laptop at home, or even coming into my office when I was on the floor. And he had been systematically stealing from my employer. He had been waiving fees for his consulting events, pocketing the cash from his clients, and then using my credentials to wipe the debt from the hotel's books. He had been rerouting payments to his fake company. He had framed me. He knew this audit would happen eventually. He knew the numbers would not add up forever, and he had set it up so that when the hammer fell, it would fall on me. "This is a setup," I whispered. The compliance officer looked unimpressed. "They always say that." She said, "Ms. Rogers, we have digital footprints matching your credentials. We have IP addresses that match your home network. Unless you can prove someone else had access to your encrypted password, this looks like felony embezzlement." The door opened behind me. Graham Pritchard stood there. He looked pale. He looked older than he had 10 minutes ago. "Graham," I said, my voice trembling, "you have to believe me. I did not do this." Graham walked into the room. He looked at the compliance officers, then at me. "I want to believe you." "Sienna," he said. His voice was low, grave. "I know you. I know your character." "Then tell them to stop," I pleaded. "Tell them to look at the security logs. Tell them to check the camera footage of who was at the desk." "We are doing that," the man said. "But the system shows remote logins from your house." I closed my eyes. Logins from my house. While I was asleep, while I was in the shower, while I was making him dinner. Graham placed a hand on my shoulder. It was a heavy hand. "Sienna, the board has been notified," he said. "The amount is significant. It crosses the threshold for criminal prosecution." Criminal prosecution. The words hung in the air like toxic smoke. "I am not firing you," Graham said. "Not yet. I am placing you on administrative leave. Pending the investigation. Leave." I stared at him. "Graham, I cannot go on leave. If I leave, I look guilty. I need to be here to find the proof. You cannot be here." "Sienna," the compliance woman said, "you are a suspect in an active fraud investigation. You need to surrender your badge, your keys, and your company laptop immediately." I felt a surge of panic so acute it was blinding. This was my life. This hotel was my identity. If I lost this, if I was branded a thief, I would never work in hospitality again. I would be destitute. Grant would win. He would take the money. He would take the house, and he would leave me with a prison record. Graham squeezed my shoulder. "Listen to me," he said, his voice dropping to a whisper so the officers could not hear. "I am buying you time. I have told the board that I believe there is an external explanation, but I can only hold them off for a week, maybe 2. You need to prove it. Sienna, you need to find the link between these transactions and someone else. If you cannot prove it is him, I cannot save you." He stepped back. "Give them your keys." "Sienna." I looked at the keys in my hand. The master key, the key to the office, the key to the kingdom I had built. I placed them on the desk next to the damning spreadsheet. I took my purse. I did not look at the compliance officers. I looked at Graham. "I will prove it," I said. My voice was shaking, but my eyes were dry. "I will bring you the head of the thief on a platter." Graham nodded solemnly. "Go." I walked out of the Riverton Slate. I walked out through the lobby I loved, past the staff who were now whispering for a different reason. I walked out the revolving doors and into the cold, gray street. I stood on the sidewalk, shivering without my coat. 10 minutes ago, I was the director of operations for the southern region. I was a woman on the rise. Now, I was a suspect. I was unemployed. I was alone. My phone buzzed in my hand. I looked down. It was a notification from my bank. A joint account alert. Transfer initiated, legal retainer. $5,000. Grant was using our money to hire a lawyer to defend himself against the divorce. I laughed. It was a wild, hysterical sound that made a passerby stare at me. He thought he was winning. He thought he had trapped me in a corner. He thought that by attacking my career, he would break me. He was wrong. He had not broken me. He had freed me. I no longer had anything to lose. I had no job to protect, no reputation to maintain, no propriety to uphold. I was no longer fighting a war on 2 fronts. The fronts had merged. The divorce and the fraud were the same beast, and I had to kill it to survive. I hailed a taxi, where to the driver asked. "The office of Hart, Vance, and Sterling," I said. I leaned back in the seat. Grant Caldwell wanted a war. He was going to get a scorched earth campaign. I was going to take the forensic accountant. I was going to take my lawyer. And I was going to tear his life apart until I found the digital fingerprint that would send him to jail instead of me. The game had changed. It was no longer about revenge. It was about survival. And I had never, ever lost a fight for survival. I sat in my car outside a pharmacy, watching the windshield wipers battle a sudden drizzle. I had just picked up a prescription for sleeping pills that I was not sure I would take, but the option felt like a necessary luxury. My phone, mounted on the dashboard, lit up. It was an unknown number. My thumb hovered over the decline button. Since the audit meeting 3 hours ago, I had received 2 calls from journalists asking for a comment on the internal investigation at the Riverton Slate. Graham had promised silence, but leaks in the hospitality industry are as common as housekeeping carts. I assumed this was another reporter looking for a quote to nail into my coffin. I tapped the red icon. Block. I put the car in drive. The phone lit up again. A text message this time. "Do not block me. It is Sloan Mercer." My foot hit the brake so hard the car jerked to a halt. Sloan Mercer. The woman in the cream coat. The woman who had stood next to my husband while I destroyed him with a smile. The woman who was currently sleeping with the man who had framed me for embezzlement. The audacity was breathtaking. I felt a surge of rage so pure it made my vision blur. I reached for the phone, intending to block her permanently, to delete the message, to erase her existence from my digital life. Then the second message came through. Grant told me you are the one stealing from the hotel. I froze. My hand hovered over the screen. He says the audit is going to bury you. We need to talk. I stared at the words. Grant told me. He was discussing the audit with her. He was discussing the frame job with his mistress. I typed back. My fingers were cold. Where the roasted bean on Wickenden. 20 minutes. Come alone. I did not reply. I threw the phone into the passenger seat and peeled away from the curb. I knew the cafe. It was neutral ground. Public, busy, loud. It was the perfect place to meet an enemy because the social contract of a coffee shop forbids screaming matches. I arrived 10 minutes early. That is the rule. If you are meeting the woman who helped ruin your marriage, you secure the terrain first. I bought a black coffee that tasted like burnt wood and took a table in the back corner. I positioned myself so my back was to the wall and I had a clear view of the entrance. I took my phone out. I opened the voice memo app. Rhode Island is a one-party consent state. That means as long as I am part of the conversation, I can record it without the other person's permission. I hit the red record button and placed the phone face down on the table. Then I waited. Sloane walked in at exactly 4 o'clock. She looked different than she had in the lobby. The glamour was dialed down. She was wearing jeans and a heavy sweater, her hair pulled back in a messy bun. She looked tired. She looked nervous. She scanned the room, saw me, and hesitated. I did not wave. I just stared. She walked over and sat down opposite me. She did not buy a drink. She placed a designer handbag on the table, a bag that probably cost more than the missing $70,000, and clasped her hands in front of her. "Thank you for coming," she said. Her voice was lower than I remembered. Lacking the smoky confidence of the check-in, I did not offer pleasantries. "You have 5 minutes," I said. "Start with why you are texting me about my internal audit, and end with why I should not throw this hot coffee in your face." Sloane winced. "Look," she said, "I know you hate me. You have every right to hate me. If I were you, I would want to kill me. But you need to know something before you judge me completely." "I am listening." I said, "I did not know he was married." She said. I let out a short, harsh laugh. "Please, you were standing there when I checked you in. You saw the ring. I saw a ring," she corrected. "He told me he was separated. He told me the divorce was finalized and you were just living in the same house until the market improved. He told me you were basically roommates who hated each other." I leaned back. It was the standard lie. The textbook cheats prologue. "And you believed him?" I asked. "A man who books a hotel room 20 minutes from his house instead of taking you home." Sloane looked down at her hands. "I wanted to believe him," she said quietly. "He is charming. You know that." "Yes," I said. "I know. He charmed me out of 7 years of my life." Sloane took a breath. She looked up, and her eyes changed. The nervousness evaporated, replaced by a sharp, professional intelligence that caught me off guard. "But that is not why I am here," she said. "I am not here to apologize for sleeping with him. I am here because of what he said about the money." She reached into her bag and pulled out an iPad. "I work in risk consulting." "Sienna," she said. I blinked. "Risk consulting, I specialize in corporate fraud detection and internal compliance." She continued. "I work for a firm in Boston. My job is to look at spreadsheets and find the anomalies. My job is to find the people who are stealing from their companies." The irony washed over me. Grant had cheated on his operations manager wife with a risk consultant mistress. He had surrounded himself with women whose entire careers were built on catching liars. "Grant is an idiot," I said. "He is," Sloane agreed, "but he is a dangerous idiot." She unlocked the iPad and turned it toward me. When we started seeing each other, he talked a lot about his business. She said, "He wanted to impress me. He bragged about his cash flow. He showed me some of his accounts to prove he could afford the lifestyle he was promising me. She swiped the screen. A screenshot appeared. It was a text message thread between her and Grant. "Look at the timestamp," she said. "August 15th. I read the text from Grant. Just moved another chunk through the linen vendor. It is so easy. Their systems are archaic. Nobody checks the manager override codes." I felt a chill run down my spine. "He told you," I whispered. "He did not say he was stealing from you." Sloan said, "He told me he had a side hustle moving inventory for a hotel partner. He made it sound like a victimless arbitrage scheme. But then, 2 nights ago, after you kicked him out, he came to my place." She paused, her expression darkening. "He was drunk. He was panicked. He started rambling about how you were going to pay for humiliating him. He said he had set a trap that would trigger the moment you tried to leave him." She swiped to another image. This one was a photo of a laptop screen. "He left his laptop open while he was in the shower." She said, "I looked. I saw the files." The image showed a folder named Riverton_logs. Inside were subfolders labeled Sienna_credentials and Crestline_invoices. "He has been logging into your system using a keylogger he installed on your home computer." Sloan said, "He captured your passwords months ago. He waited for days when he knew you were off-site or busy, and then he logged in remotely to approve his own fake invoices." I stared at the image. A keylogger. He had spyware on my laptop, the laptop I used to pay our bills, the laptop I used to order his birthday presents. He did not just steal the money, I said, my voice shaking with a cold fury. He built a frame. "Exactly," Sloan said. "He knew that if you ever caught him, he needed leverage. He needed a way to make sure you could not destroy him without destroying yourself. It is mutually assured destruction. If you divorce him and take his money, he tips off the hotel board about the embezzlement." I looked at Sloan. "Why are you telling me this?" I asked. "If he goes down, the gravy train stops. You lose the rich boyfriend." Sloan laughed. It was a dry, bitter sound. "Rich boyfriend Sienna. He is using my credit card to pay for his hotel room right now. He is broke. He spent all that stolen money on gambling debts and crypto schemes that tanked." She leaned in closer. "And there is one other thing," she said. She tapped the screen again. A voice memo file appeared. "I recorded this last night." She said, "He was on the phone with his lawyer. He didn't know I was in the hallway." She pressed play. The sound of my husband's voice filled the small space between us. It was tinny, distorted by the recording, but undeniable. "Do not worry about the assets. Looking for the offshore accounts. She will not find them. But listen, the leverage is the hotel. I have the logs. It looks like she did it. It is her login. It is her override code. If she pushes for the house, I send the file to the board anonymously. She goes to jail. I get the house by default. It is a slam dunk." The recording ended. I sat there, frozen. It was one thing to suspect it. It was another to hear him say it. She goes to jail. He was willing to send me to prison. He was willing to strip me of my freedom, my career, my entire life, just to keep a house he couldn't afford and money he hadn't earned. This was not a marriage gone wrong. This was an assassination attempt. I looked up at Sloan. "You have the original file?" I asked. "I do," she said. "And you have the screenshots of the text messages where he admits to the linen vendor scheme?" "Yes." I took a deep breath. "Why?" I asked again. "Why help me? You could just walk away. You could dump him and disappear." Sloan looked me in the eye. "Because he tried to use my bank account yesterday to move $5,000. She said, "He tried to do to me what he did to you, and I work in risk management. Sienna, I do not let liabilities walk around. I liquidate them." She slid the iPad across the table toward me. "I airdropped everything to this folder." She said, "It is yours." I looked at the device. It was a digital smoking gun. It was the key to my freedom. I picked up my own phone. I stopped the recording I had been making. I looked at Sloan. I saw a woman who was just as angry, just as used, and just as dangerous as I was. "I do not forgive you," I said. My voice was flat. "You slept with my husband. You walked into my hotel on his arm. That does not go away because you found a conscience. I do not expect you to forgive me." Sloane said, "I do not want your forgiveness. I want to watch him burn." We stared at each other. It was an alliance born of necessity, fueled by a shared hatred for the same man. I picked up her iPad. "Send the files to my email," I said, "and then send them to my lawyer. Her name is Vivian Hart." Sloane nodded. She tapped a few times on the screen. "Sent," she said. I stood up. I picked up my coffee, which was now cold. "Grant thinks he is playing chess," I said. "He thinks he is 3 moves ahead." "He is not playing chess," Sloane said. "He is playing solitaire. He thinks he is the only person at the table." I looked down at her. "Thank you for the ammunition," I said. Sloane hesitated, then asked, "What are you going to do?" I smiled. It was the smile I used when a guest complained about a room that I knew was perfect. "I am going to check him out," I said, "permanently." I turned and walked out of the cafe. I did not look back. I walked into the rain. The water felt good on my face. It felt like a baptism. I had the proof. I had the voice recording. I had the text messages. I hailed a cab. Vivian Hart's office. I told the driver. I pulled out my phone and dialed Graham Pritchard's private number. He answered on the second ring. "Sienna," he asked. "Do not fire me yet." "Graham." I said, "I told you. I am holding them off. But I have the smoking gun." I interrupted. "I have a recording of him admitting to the frame job. I have texts of him bragging about the override codes." There was a silence on the line. Then, a sharp exhale. "Bring it to me," Graham said. "Not yet." I said, "I am taking it to my lawyer first. We are going to verify the metadata. We are going to make it bulletproof. And then what?" Graham asked. "Then we are going to set a trap." I said, "A trap." "He thinks I am cornered." Graham. "He thinks I am panicked. He thinks his plan is working. We are going to let him believe it for 48 more hours." I watched the city blur past the window. "He wants to play games with hotel operations," I said. "Fine. We will give him a show." I hung up the phone. I looked at the recording on my screen. Grant_confession. M4A. My stomach no longer hurt. The fear was gone. The grief was gone. There was only the cold, hard procedural tension of a closing shift. Grant Caldwell had made one fatal mistake. He had forgotten who he was dealing with. He thought he was dealing with a wife. He was dealing with the manager, and the manager always balances the books. The conference room at Hart, Vance, and Sterling had transformed into a war room. The abstract art on the walls seemed to vibrate with the tension in the air. On one side of the mahogany table sat Vivian Hart, my divorce attorney, looking like a general reviewing troop movements. On the other side sat Sarah Jenkins, the compliance officer from Asterline Hospitality, who had tried to confiscate my keys less than 24 hours ago. Between them sat Marcus Thorne, the forensic accountant, a man who looked like he found spiritual enlightenment in spreadsheets. I stood at the head of the table. I was no longer the suspect. I was the witness, the prosecutor, and the architect of the sting operation. I slid the iPad I had received from Sloane across the polished wood. "This is the chain of custody," I said, my voice steady. The device contains screenshots of text messages dated from August through November. It contains a voice recording made 2 nights ago in which Grant Caldwell admits to installing a keylogger on my home laptop. It contains a folder of PDF invoices he sent to his mistress to brag about his income. Sarah Jenkins picked up the iPad. She did not look at me with hostility anymore. She looked at me with the desperate hope of someone who needs to save her own job. If she had fired me for fraud while the real thief was still siphoning money, the liability for Asterline would have been catastrophic. "Verify the metadata." I said, "You will find the creation dates match the transfer logs in your system." Marcus Thorne didn't need the iPad. He was deep into a stack of printed bank statements I had authorized him to access. He looked up, adjusting his wire-rimmed glasses. "I have already traced the receiving account for Crestline Linen and Decor," he said. His voice was quiet, devoid of drama. It is not a corporate account. It is a DBA doing business as registered to a personal checking account at a regional credit union. Who is the signatory? Vivian asked, her pen hovering over her legal pad. It is not Grant, Marcus said. Grant is smart enough not to put his name on the direct deposit. The account is registered to a Kevin D. Caldwell. I felt a sharp intake of breath hit the back of my throat. Kevin, I whispered. Vivian looked at me. Who is Kevin? His cousin, I said. The realization washed over me like ice water. Kevin works in logistics for a shipping company in Jersey. He has always been the family screw-up. He owes money to everyone. Grant told me he stopped talking to Kevin 5 years ago because he was a bad influence. He did not stop talking to him. Marcus said, he employed him. I looked at the diagram Marcus had drawn on the whiteboard. It was a flow chart of money. It works like this, Marcus explained. Tapping the marker against the board, Grant creates a fake invoice from Crestline Linen for, say, $3,000. He uses your stolen credentials to approve it in the hotel system. The hotel pays Crestline. The money hits Kevin's account. Kevin keeps 10% as a handling fee and transfers the remaining 90% to a crypto wallet that Grant controls. I stared at the board. The affair with Sloane was just a perk. It was a distraction. The real betrayal wasn't sex. It was an organized criminal enterprise. My husband wasn't just a cheater. He was a money launderer. He had turned my hotel, my sanctuary, into a washing machine for his dirty cash. So, the affair was the cover, Vivian mused. He knew if you caught him cheating, you would focus on the woman. You would be the emotional, grieving wife. You wouldn't be looking for a shell company run by his cousin. He underestimated one thing. I said, my voice cold. What is that Sarah Jenkins asked? He underestimated how much I care about my operational budget. I said, I would have found that $3,000 eventually. I always find the variance. Sarah nodded. She pulled a laptop toward her. We have enough to go to the police right now, she said. With the recording and the bank trace, we can have him arrested for fraud and identity theft. No, I said. The room went silent. Everyone looked at me. If we arrest him now, he claims it was all Kevin. I said, he claims Kevin set up the account and he was just a victim of identity theft too. He claims the recording was taken out of context. He is a consultant. He talks for a living. He will spin this. He will delay the divorce. He will hide the rest of the money. I placed my hands on the table. I want to catch him in the act. I said, I want him to do it one more time. I want him to log in, approve a fraudulent invoice, and book a room, all while we are watching him in real time. I want the digital handcuffs on him before the real ones click. Vivian smiled. It was a shark's smile. Entrapment is tricky, she warned. But if he initiates the action, if he walks through a door he opened himself, that is just good police work. Sarah Jenkins typed something into her terminal. We can set a trap, Sarah said. I can create a pending invoice in the system, a big one. Something that looks like a system error that needs a manual override. We will flag it as urgent payment required. If he is monitoring the system via his keylogger, he will see it. He is broke, right? He is desperate. I confirmed. Sloane says he is maxed out. He will be tempted to approve it and redirect it to Crestline. Sarah said, we will leave the back door open for his IP address. We will watch the keystrokes as he enters them. How much? Marcus asked. Make it $12,000, I said. 12,000? Sarah raised an eyebrow. That is high. It is the exact cost of the new HVAC compressors we ordered last week. I said, he knows about them because I complained about the cost over dinner. He will think it is a legitimate vendor payment he can hijack. Sarah nodded. Done. I will stage the invoice for tomorrow night. But that is not enough. Vivian said, we need him physically at the hotel. We need to serve him the divorce papers and the fraud indictment simultaneously. We need the humiliation to be public. It helps with the settlement leverage. I looked at my phone. I had one card left to play. Sloane, I said. I picked up the device and dialed the number. She answered on the first ring. It is Sienna, I said. I am ready. Sloane answered. She sounded tired, but resolved. I need you to text him. I said, I need you to tell him that you want to celebrate. Tell him you want to see him tomorrow night. Tell him to book the suite again. Tomorrow night, Sloane asked. Is that not? It is the night of the charity gala. I said, the hotel will be packed. The mayor will be there. The press will be there. He will think it is perfect cover. I said, he loves hiding in plain sight. He thinks I will be too busy managing the event to notice him sneaking into the elevator. I will do it, Sloane said. What should I say? Tell him you miss him. I said, my voice devoid of any emotion. Tell him you want to make it up to him, and tell him to put it on the company account because you are broke. I hung up. Now? I said to the room, we wait. The next morning, I walked back into the Riverton slate. Graham Pritchard had reinstated my access quietly. To the staff, I had simply taken a personal day. To the compliance team, I was the bait. I stood in the lobby at 8 a.m. The space was already transforming for the gala. Florists were hauling in massive arrangements of white hydrangeas and silver branches. The lighting crew was testing the gels on the chandeliers. I felt a strange sense of detachment. This was my stage. But the play had changed. I was no longer just the manager ensuring the guests were happy. I was the stage manager of a tragedy. I went to my office. I sat at my desk. I knew his keylogger was watching. I opened my email. I did some mundane tasks. I approved a linen order. I responded to a guest complaint about a noisy ice machine. Then, I opened the accounting software. There it was. The ghost invoice Sarah had planted. Vendor Tri-State, HVAC, amount $12,500. Status pending approval. Alert overdue. I left it on the screen for exactly 30 seconds, long enough for his spyware to take a screenshot. Then I minimized the window and went to a meeting. I had to act normal. I had to be the Sienna he knew, the busy, overwhelmed manager who might leave a window open on her computer. At noon, my phone buzzed. It was a screenshot from Sloane. Grant, God, I missed you too. I have had the worst week. Sienna is being a nightmare. Sloane, I just want to forget everything. Can we go back to the suite tomorrow night, Grant? The gala is tomorrow. It is risky. Sloane. She will be distracted. Please, Grant. I need you, Grant. Okay, I will handle it. I have a little bonus coming in anyway. I will book it now. I stared at the text. A little bonus. He had seen the invoice. He was going to steal the $12,000 to pay for his night with his mistress. I walked down to the security office in the basement. Sarah Jenkins was there, along with the head of our IT security and a private investigator Vivian had hired. They were huddled around a bank of monitors. He is in, the IT director said. I looked at the screen. It showed a mirror of the back-end system. A cursor was moving. It was not my cursor. He is using the captured credentials. Sarah whispered. He is rerouting the HVAC invoice. I watched as the invisible hand of my husband deleted Tri-State HVAC and typed in Crestline Linen Decor. I watched him change the routing number to the credit union account in New Jersey. I watched him click approve. The room was silent. We had him. That click was a felony. That click was 5 years in prison. He is not done. I said, watch the reservation system. Sure enough, the cursor moved. He opened the booking engine. He typed in his name, Grant Caldwell. He selected the Executive Harbor Suite. He entered the dates. Tomorrow night, one night. He went to the payment screen. He entered a credit card number. I recognized it immediately. It was a new card, likely one he had opened in panic, or perhaps another joint card I had forgotten to freeze. He clicked confirm. The printer in the corner of the security office whirred to life. It spat out a single sheet of paper. Reservation confirmation, Grant Caldwell. Status confirmed. I picked up the paper. It felt heavy in my hand. He is coming, I said. Sarah Jenkins let out a long breath. We have the data log. We have the IP trace. It matches his phone's location data. Vivian's private investigator nodded. I will have the papers ready. We will serve him in the lobby. No, I said. I looked at the screen, where the blinking cursor of my husband's digital ghost was finally logging off. We do not serve him when he walks in. I said, we let him check in. We let him think he got away with it. We let him ride the elevator up. We let him open the door to the suite. Why, Sarah asked. Because I want him to feel safe. I said, I want him to pour the champagne. I want him to think he has won. I crumpled the reservation confirmation in my hand, and then, when he comes back down to the lobby to meet Sloane, that is when we end him. I walked out of the security office and back up to the lobby. The florists were finished. The room smelled of fresh flowers and expensive wax. It looked beautiful. It looked perfect. I stood behind the front desk, my hands resting on the cool marble. Tomorrow night, the elite of Providence would be drinking champagne in this room, and tomorrow night, Grant Caldwell would walk through those revolving doors one last time. He thought he was the guest of honor. He had no idea he was the main course. The notification arrived at 9 a.m. on the day before the gala. It did not come in the form of a scream or a shattered glass. It came as a polite, terrifyingly formal email from the corporate ethics hotline of Asterline Hospitality. Subject: formal complaint regarding workplace conduct. Reference number 8499. I sat in my office, the door closed, and read the PDF attachment. My hands were steady, but my stomach turned over slowly, like a heavy stone rolling downhill. Grant had not just decided to fight the divorce, he had decided to scorch the earth beneath my feet. The complaint was a masterpiece of manipulation. It did not mention the affair. It did not mention the stolen money. Instead, it painted a portrait of a woman unhinged. It claimed that I, Sienna Rogers, was suffering from acute emotional instability due to a domestic dispute. It alleged that I was abusing my authority as operations manager to target a private citizen, him, by blocking his access to services and creating a hostile environment for his business associates. He used words like harassment, vindictive, and unbalanced. He was trying to get me fired before the trap could snap shut. He knew that if I lost my job, I lost my access to the servers. I lost the ability to track his IP address. I lost the credibility to stand before a judge and say he was the thief, not me. My phone rang. It was the director of human resources for the entire hotel group. Sienna, she said, her voice tight. We have received a serious complaint. I have it in front of me. Janet, I said. I was typing as I spoke, pulling up the security logs for the dates he mentioned. We need to discuss this. She said, the board is nervous. The allegations suggest you are using hotel resources for a personal vendetta. I did not get defensive. Defensiveness looks like guilt. Janet, I said, my voice cool and professional. This complaint was filed by a man currently under investigation by our own compliance department for felony embezzlement. This is not a whistleblower report. It is a distraction tactic. There was a pause on the line. I know about the audit. Sienna, she said, but the board does not like noise, and this is noise. I hung up and immediately called Vivian Hart. He is trying to flank us. I said, he is doing more than that, Vivian replied. Her voice was clipped, the sound of papers shuffling in the background. I just got an alert from the court. Grant filed an emergency motion to freeze your joint assets an hour ago. I blinked. He froze the assets. He claims he fears financial retaliation. Vivian said, he told the judge that you are erratic and that he is worried you will drain the accounts out of spite. He is playing the victim. Sienna, he is projecting his own crimes onto you. I looked at the computer screen, where the ghost of his $12,000 theft was still lingering in the system logs. He is projecting. I agreed, but he is also stalling. He wants to cut off my access to funds so I cannot pay you. He does not know I work on a retainer you already paid. Vivian said darkly, and he does not know we have the evidence of dissipation. I am filing a counter motion right now. We will attach the forensic report showing the transfers to his cousin. The judge will not only unfreeze the assets, he will likely grant us temporary exclusive control. But Sienna, you need to hold the line at the hotel. I am holding, I said, but the line was about to get much harder to hold. At 2 p.m, the elevator doors to the executive level slid open. I was expecting the florist to approve the centerpieces for the gala. Instead, Two men walked out. One was Jonathan Sterling, a senior board member of Asterline Hospitality. The other was a man I recognized only from the donor plaques in the lobby, Arthur Pendleton. They were not here for a social call. They were wearing the kind of heavy wool suits that cost $5,000, and they walked with the entitled weight of men who own buildings. I stood up. My heart hammered against my ribs, but I forced my face into a mask of welcoming serenity. "Mr. Sterling," I said, coming around my desk. "Mr. Pendleton. This is an unexpected honor." "Sienna." "Mr. Sterling said. He did not smile. "We were in the neighborhood. We thought we would stop by to see how the preparations for the gala are coming along, and to check on the atmosphere." The subtext was loud enough to shatter windows. Atmosphere meant me. Atmosphere meant the rumors Grant had started. Then I realized the connection. Grant's father, Elias Caldwell, played golf at the same country club as Arthur Pendleton. It was a loose connection, one I had never thought mattered. Grant and his father were not close, or so I thought. But blood is thicker than water, and old money protects its own. Grant must have called his father, spun a story about his crazy wife trying to ruin his career, and his father had made a call to his golf buddy. They were here to intimidate me. They were here to see if I would crack. I smiled. It was the smile of a woman who had nothing to hide because she had already documented everything. "I am so glad you are here," I said. "Actually, the timing is perfect. I was just about to review the final security protocols and compliance updates for the event. Since you are here, I would love for you to sit in." I did not wait for them to agree. I pressed the intercom button on my desk. "Sarah, could you come to my office, please, and bring the current audit file?" "Mr. Sterling stiffened. "We do not need to get into technicalities." "Sienna, we just want to ensure that personal matters are not affecting the brand." I gestured to the chairs. "The brand is my only priority." "Mr. Sterling," I said, "that is why I insist on total transparency." Sarah Jenkins walked in. She looked surprised to see the board members, but she took her cue from me. She laid the file on the desk. For the next 20 minutes, I did not talk about my marriage. I did not talk about Grant. I talked about efficiency. I showed them the revenue reports, which were up 4%. I showed them the gala logistics, which were flawless. And then, I let Sarah speak. "Ms. Rogers has been fully cooperative with our internal review," Sarah said, her voice dry and factual. "In fact, her documentation has been instrumental in identifying a significant external security threat that we are currently neutralizing." Sterling looked at Sarah, then at me. The narrative Grant had fed them, the story of the hysterical, vindictive wife, was dissolving in the face of cold, hard competence. They wanted to see a woman falling apart. Instead, they saw a machine. "We are handling the threat with legal and digital containment." I added, "By tomorrow night, the issue will be resolved permanently." Pendleton cleared his throat. He stood up. "Well," he said, "it seems you have things in hand." "We do," I said. "I hope you enjoy the gala." "Gentlemen." They walked out. They looked uncomfortable. They had come to reprimand a liability, and they had left feeling like they had just interrupted a surgical procedure. I closed the door. I leaned against it and exhaled until my lungs burned. "That was too close," Sarah whispered. "It does not matter," I said. "They are gone," and they saw me standing. I went back to my desk. The sun was setting over Providence, turning the gray sky into a bruised purple. The hotel was waking up for the evening shift. The lobby below would be filling with guests, laughter, and the clinking of glass. My personal cell phone buzzed. It was a new number. I stared at it. I knew who it was. He had run out of blocked numbers. He had run out of friends to call. He was down to burner phones. I opened the message. "Stop before you ruin us." I stared at the screen. The word "us" mocked me. It sat there, glowing in the dim light of my office. Us. He still thought there was an us to save. Or perhaps he thought he could guilt me into saving him. He was appealing to the 7 years, the memories, the woman who used to pack his suitcase and iron his shirts. He thought that woman was still in charge. He thought that if he pushed hard enough, she would break, apologize, and fix the mess he had made. He did not understand. That woman died in the lobby 3 days ago. I typed my response. I did not consult Vivian. I did not ask Sarah. This was not a legal strategy. This was an epitaph. You ruined us. I am just stopping you from ruining me. I hit send. Then I blocked the number. I stood up and walked to the window. I looked down at the street. Somewhere out there. Grant was reading that text. Somewhere out there. He was realizing that his intimidation tactics had failed. His father's connections had failed. His freezing of the assets had failed. He had one option left: the money. He needed the $12,000 from the fake invoice to survive the next month. He needed the validation of his mistress to survive the night. He would come. The trap was set. The bait was in the water. I turned back to my computer. I opened the reservation system one last time. Grant Caldwell, Executive Harbor Suite. Arrival tomorrow. I printed the registration card. I placed it in the center of my desk. Everything depended on tomorrow. If he did not show up, if he got cold feet, if he sensed the trap, we would be stuck in a long, messy legal battle. I needed him to walk through those doors. I needed him to commit the crime in the light. I picked up my pen and wrote a small note on the corner of the registration card, a reminder to myself for the final act. Do not smile. I turned off the lights in my office. The darkness felt protective. I was ready. The hotel was ready. Tomorrow, the curtain would rise, and Grant Caldwell was going to find out that the ending of this story had been written by the woman he thought he could erase. The evening of the Winter Solstice Gala was not a night for mistakes. It was the single most lucrative event on the Riverton Slate's calendar. A night when the lobby transformed from a place of business into a theater of wealth. Tickets cost $5,000 a plate. The guest list included the mayor, 2 senators, and the entire board of directors for Asterline Hospitality. If there was ever a night to hide a crime, this was it. The logic was sound. At least from a criminal's perspective, the hotel staff would be stretched thin. The security team would be focused on VIP protection and crowd control. The management, meaning me, would be drowning in logistics, too busy putting out fires in the ballroom to notice a husband sneaking into an elevator with his mistress. It was the perfect cover. But Grant Caldwell forgot one thing. I do not get distracted. I get focused. I stood in my dressing room off the main office. I had chosen my outfit with the precision of a soldier selecting body armor. I was not wearing a gown. I was not wearing sequins. I was wearing a tuxedo suit in midnight blue. Sharp enough to cut skin. The trousers were tailored to a perfect line. The jacket was structured, commanding authority. I pulled my hair back into a low, severe chignon. My makeup was minimal but flawless. I looked in the mirror. I did not see a wife. I did not see a victim. I saw the director of operations. I picked up the items I had prepared. First, a slim black folder. Inside was the timeline of the fraud, the bank trace to his cousin in New Jersey, and the printout of the $12,000 HVAC invoice he was scheduled to approve tonight. Second, a single USB drive. It contained the mirrored logs, the video files, and the voice recording Sloan had sent me. I placed them in the inner pocket of my jacket, right against my heart. I walked out of the office and down the service corridor. The air was already buzzing with the frantic energy of the event. Waiters were rushing past with trays of crystal flutes. The smell of roasted lamb and truffle oil wafted from the kitchens. I reached the lobby. It was breathtaking. The space was awash in amber light. A string quartet was playing soft, intricate music near the fountain. The guests were beginning to arrive, a sea of tuxedos and floor-length gowns, laughter and flashbulbs popping near the entrance. I scanned the room. To the untrained eye, it was a party. To me, it was a trap. I looked toward the concierge desk. Sarah Jenkins, the compliance officer, was standing there, dressed in a black evening gown that allowed her to blend in perfectly. She was holding a tablet, pretending to check a guest list. She was actually monitoring the internal network, waiting for the specific IP address of Grant's phone to ping the hotel Wi-Fi. I looked toward the elevators. Mike Ross, the private investigator, was leaning against a pillar, checking his watch. He looked like a bored driver waiting for his boss. He had a clear line of sight to the elevator controls. And then, I looked at the front desk. Leo was there, looking nervous in his best uniform, but standing right next to him, reviewing a stack of keycards, was Graham Pritchard, the owner of the hotel. Graham never worked the desk during galas. He usually mingled with the donors, drinking scotch and shaking hands, but tonight, he had refused to leave the front line. He had told me earlier that if an employee of his company was going to be accused of theft, he wanted to see the evidence with his own eyes. He was there to witness the check-in. He was there to see if the man I had married was truly the monster I claimed he was. My phone buzzed in my pocket. I pulled it out, shielding the screen from the passing guests. It was a text from Sloan. "We are 5 minutes away. He is nervous." I did not reply. A second text appeared. "Warning, he suspects something. He keeps asking if you are working the desk. He told me that if you try to confront him, he's going to make a scene. He is going to claim you are harassing him in front of the board members. He wants to flip the narrative. Be careful." I stared at the message. So that was his plan. If he got caught, he would scream. He would play the victim. He would count on the fact that I would be terrified of causing a scandal at the gala. He thought I would back down to save the dignity of the hotel. He thought I would choose silence over the truth. I slid the phone back into my pocket. I walked over to the front desk. Graham looked up as I approached. "Everything is set," I said quietly. The voice was barely a whisper over the sound of the violins. Graham nodded. He looked at the folder in my jacket pocket. "Are you sure about this, Sienna?" he asked. "Once we do this, there is no going back. The police are on standby in the back office. I am sure." I said, "Grant has a plan." I added, "He intends to cause a scene if I stop him. He wants to embarrass the hotel, so we will let him go." Graham straightened his tie. His face was grim. "Let him try." Graham said, "This is my hotel, and nobody threatens my staff." I took my position. I stood at the end of the counter, near the VIP check-in station. It gave me a clear view of the revolving doors, but it kept me slightly out of the direct line of sight for anyone entering. The clock on the wall behind the desk read 7:45. The invoice trigger was live. Sarah had confirmed it 10 minutes ago. The fake HVAC invoice for $12,500 was sitting in the approval queue. Marked urgent. We knew Grant needed money. We knew he had access. We knew he would try to approve it and divert the funds to his cousin's account the moment he felt safe in the suite. He just had to check in first. The next 10 minutes felt like 10 years. I watched the guests stream in. I smiled at the mayor. I nodded to Mr. Sterling, the board member who had tried to intimidate me yesterday. He looked surprised to see me so calm, so in control. He raised a glass of champagne in my direction, a silent acknowledgement that I was still standing. I checked the monitors. The security feed showed a black sedan pulling up to the curb outside. My heart stopped, then restarted with a violent thud. It was a rideshare car, a generic black sedan. The rear door opened, a leg stepped out, then a coat, the charcoal wool coat. Grant. He stood up and adjusted his scarf. He looked handsome. That was the cruelest part of it all. He looked exactly like the man I had loved. He had that easy grace, that confident tilt of the chin. He looked like he belonged here, among the wealth and the power. He turned and offered his hand to the person remaining in the car. Sloane stepped out. She was wearing a red dress. It was bold. It was a statement. She looked terrified. I saw her whisper something to him. He laughed. He patted her hand. He was reassuring her. He was telling her it was easy. He was telling her that his wife was a fool who was busy counting napkins in the ballroom. They walked toward the entrance. Inside the lobby, the noise seemed to fade away from me. The music, the laughter, the clinking glasses, it all became white noise. All I could hear was the blood rushing in my ears. All I could see were the revolving doors. Sarah Jenkins looked up from her tablet. She caught my eye. She gave a microscopic nod. The trap was primed. Mike Ross pushed off the pillar and moved slightly closer to the elevators, cutting off the escape route. Graham Pritchard put his hands on the counter. He looked like a judge waiting for the defendant to enter the courtroom. The doors turned. Grant stepped into the lobby. He stopped for a moment, letting the warmth of the room hit him. He took a deep breath, scanning the space. He looked at the crowd. He looked at the chandeliers. He smiled. It was a smile of pure ownership. It was the smile of a man who believed he had outsmarted everyone. He believed he was invisible. He believed he was entitled to this, the luxury, the woman, the stolen money. He took Sloane's arm. She was stiff, her eyes darting around the room. But he did not notice. He was too busy enjoying his own brilliance. He began to walk toward the front desk. He did not look toward the VIP station where I was standing. He looked straight ahead, toward Leo. He was heading for the path of least resistance. He wanted to get the key, get up to the room, and get on his laptop to steal the money. I stepped out from behind the pillar. I did not rush. I did not shout. I walked with the measured, terrifying grace of a woman who owns the ground beneath her feet. I moved to the center of the desk, right next to Graham. Grant was 20 feet away, 10 feet, 5 feet. He was reaching into his pocket for his wallet. He was looking at Leo, ready to give his charming little speech about a reservation. "Welcome to the Riverton Slate," I said. My voice was not loud, but it cut through the ambient noise like a razor. Grant froze. It was the same reaction as the first night, the physical recoil, the drain of color. But this time, there was no confusion. This time, there was recognition. He looked up. He saw me. He saw the midnight blue suit. He saw the hair pulled back. He saw the eyes that were no longer the eyes of his wife, but the eyes of his executioner. And then he saw Graham Pritchard standing next to me. His smile faltered. It twitched at the corners, trying to hold on, trying to maintain the facade, but the structural integrity was gone. "Sienna," he said. His voice was too high. He cleared his throat. "I did not know you were working tonight. I am always working." "Grant," I said, "especially when there are security risks on the property." He laughed, but it was a brittle, cracking sound. "Security risks. I am just checking in. Sienna, do we have to do this here?" He gestured vaguely at the crowd behind him. He was already trying to pivot, trying to use the audience as a shield. Sloane took a half step away from him. She knew what was coming. She looked at me, and I held her gaze for a split second. It was the only acknowledgement she would get. I placed my hands on the marble. "Reservation for Caldwell," I said, "Executive Harbor Suite." One night, Grant licked his lips. "Yes. Look, we just want to go up. It has been a long week." I typed his name into the terminal. I did not need to. I knew the reservation was there. I just wanted him to hear the keys clacking. I wanted him to sweat. "I see the reservation," I said, "and I see the payment method on file." I looked up at him. "Are you using the company card again?" "Grant," I asked, "or did you want to use the funds from the HVAC invoice you were planning to approve tonight?" The air between us snapped. Grant went rigid. His eyes went wide, darting from me to Graham. "I do not know what you are talking about," he hissed. "Keep your voice down. You are making a scene." "I am not making a scene," I said calmly. "I am processing a transaction." I pressed a button on the keyboard. At that exact moment, Sarah Jenkins stepped forward from the concierge desk. She held up her tablet. "Subject has logged into the network," she said clearly. Grant spun around. He looked at Sarah. He looked at the tablet. "What is this?" he demanded. He looked back at me, his face flushing red with anger and panic. "Is this some kind of joke? You are hacking my phone?" "No, Grant," I said. "We are monitoring our network, and you just auto-connected." I pulled the USB drive from my pocket. I placed it on the counter. It made a small click against the marble. "And this," I said, "is the record of every time you have logged in as me for the last 6 months. This is the record of the $70,000 you stole. This is the record of the fake vendor in New Jersey." Grant looked at the USB drive. He looked at Graham. Graham did not blink. "Mr. Caldwell," Graham said, his voice deep and rumbling, "you are trespassing, and you are under investigation for corporate fraud." Grant took a step back. He looked like a trapped animal. He looked at the gala guests, who were starting to turn their heads. The bubble of privacy was bursting. "You are crazy," Grant shouted. He pointed a shaking finger at me. "She is crazy. She is trying to frame me because I left her." He turned to the nearest couple, a wealthy donor and his wife, and pleaded with them. "She is obsessed with me. She is stealing money and blaming it on me." I did not flinch. I did not scream. I picked up the black folder. I opened it. I pulled out the single sheet of paper that mattered, the screenshot of his text to Sloane, the one where he bragged about the linen scheme. I slid it across the counter. "Is this my obsession?" Grant, I asked softly. "Or is this your confession?" Grant looked down at the paper. He read his own words. He stopped shouting. He stopped breathing. The fight went out of him. It was instant. The bluster. The arrogance. The victimhood. It all evaporated, leaving only a small, terrified man in a charcoal coat. He looked at Sloane. She was standing 5 feet away, her arms crossed, her face cold. She was not looking at him. She was looking at the floor. He looked back at me. "Sienna," he whispered. "Please." It was the same word he had used 3 nights ago. Please. But the context had changed. 3 nights ago, he was asking for discretion. Tonight, he was asking for mercy. I looked at him. I felt nothing. No love. No hate. Just the satisfaction of a job well done. I reached for the key packet. I did not make keys this time. I picked up a different envelope, one that contained a subpoena and a cease and desist order. I placed it on the counter. I leaned forward. I delivered the line, the same line, but this time, it was not a question. It was a verdict. "Welcome to the Riverton Slate," I said. Grant stared at me, his eyes filling with tears. "I hope you enjoyed your stay, sir." I signaled to Mike Ross. The private investigator stepped forward. He was not alone. 2 uniformed police officers, who had been waiting in the manager's office, stepped out into the lobby. Grant saw the badges. He slumped. He did not run. There was nowhere to run. The revolving doors were blocked. The elevators were locked. The lobby was silent now. The music had stopped. The guests were watching. And in the center of it all, under the crystal chandelier, I watched my husband get dismantled. He tried to speak, but I turned my back on him. I looked at Graham. "I am going to check the banquet hall," I said. Graham nodded. "Go." I walked away. I walked past the police officers who were reading Grant his rights. I walked past Sloane, who was watching with a grim satisfaction. I walked past the staring guests. I did not look back. I had a hotel to run, and for the first time in a week, the books were finally balanced. The chandelier above the reception desk seemed to vibrate with the tension of the moment. Though the string quartet was still playing a gentle waltz in the corner of the lobby, the air smelled of expensive perfume and imminent justice. Grant stood before me. He was still wearing that mask of arrogant confusion, the look of a man who believed he could talk his way out of a burning building. He had not yet realized that the fire was coming from inside his own pockets. He leaned against the marble counter, flashing a smile that was meant to be charming, but looked frantic under the harsh halogen lights. "Sienna," he said, lowering his voice to a conspiratorial whisper, "let's just resolve this quietly. I know you are upset. I know the divorce is messy, but we are professionals. Just give me the key. I will go up to the suite, and we can talk about the assets in the morning." He reached for the key packet I had placed on the counter. He thought he had won. He thought the presence of the gala guests and the board members would force me into submission. He thought I would fold to protect the reputation of the hotel. He was wrong. The reputation of the hotel depended on cleanliness, and he was the stain I was about to remove. I placed my hand over the key packet. The marble was cool beneath my palm. Behind him, Sloane shifted her weight. She was trying to look casual, examining her manicure, but I saw her eyes flick toward the ceiling corners. She was counting the cameras. She knew the angles. She knew that every pixel of this interaction was being recorded in high definition. She took a subtle step away from him, creating a physical distance that mirrored the legal distance she had already established by sending me the evidence. I looked Grant in the eye. I did not whisper. I projected my voice, pitching it perfectly so that it carried over the music, reaching the ears of Graham Pritchard, the board members, and the nearby guests. "Welcome," I said. The word hung in the air. Grant froze. His hand hovered over the counter. I continued, my voice gaining strength, stripping away the veneer of the wife and leaving only the steel of the manager. "Hope you enjoyed your stay, sir." It was the same sentence I had used the night I caught him, but that night it had been a question, a sarcastic remark whispered in the dark. Tonight, it was a closing statement. It was a tombstone. Grant blinked, confusion clouding his eyes. What, I haven't even checked in yet. And then, the sound happened. Ping. It was a soft, digital chime from the computer terminal in front of me. To anyone else, it was just a notification. To me, it was the sound of a guillotine blade dropping. I looked down at the screen. Alert. Unauthorized vendor approval detected. Override code S-Rogers. IP address, local-lobby-guest-network. He had done it. His phone, currently sitting in his pocket, had automatically connected to the network and executed the script he had set up days ago. He had just tried to approve the $12,500 invoice for the fake HVAC repair. He had tried to steal from me while standing 3 feet away from my face. I turned the monitor around so he could see it. Grant looked at the screen. He saw the red alert box. He saw the amount. He saw the destination account number, the one belonging to his cousin in New Jersey. The color drained from his face so fast it looked like a physical injury. His mouth opened, but no sound came out. At that exact moment, the wall of silence behind me broke. Sarah Jenkins, the head of compliance, stepped forward from the shadows of the concierge niche. She was holding a thick-bound document. It was not a welcome packet. It was an audit report. "Mr. Caldwell," she said, her voice clipped and formal. "My name is Sarah Jenkins, Corporate Compliance for Asterline Hospitality. We have just logged a fraudulent transaction attempted from your personal device targeting our accounts payable system." Grant stammered, stepping back. That is a glitch. My phone is in my pocket." "Exactly," Sarah said. She dropped the heavy packet on the counter with a loud thud. "We traced the digital handshake. We also traced the 28 previous times you used your wife's credentials to embezzle funds. It is all here. Grant, the dates, the times, the IP addresses." Grant looked around wildly. He looked at the guests. He looked at Graham Pritchard, who was standing like a statue of judgment near the pillar. "This is a setup," Grant shouted. His voice cracked. High and desperate. "She set me up. She has my passwords." Then, the revolving doors stopped moving, and a woman walked into the lobby. She did not look like a guest. She walked with the sharp, predatory gait of a woman who charges $600 an hour. Vivian Hart appeared beside me. She placed a second stack of documents next to the audit packet. "It is not a setup, Grant," Vivian said smoothly. "It is a forensic accounting of marital theft." Grant looked at Vivian. "Who are you?" "I am Sienna's lawyer," Vivian said, "and this is a motion proving dissipation of assets. We have the bank records showing you transferred $40,000 of marital funds to a shell company. We have the credit card receipts for the jewelry you bought, Ms. Mercer. We have the flight logs." Vivian opened the folder. She clicked a pen and held it out. Grant looked at the papers. It was a settlement agreement. "What is this?" he whispered. "This is your exit strategy," Vivian said. "You sign this, admitting to the fraud and agreeing to full repayment plus legal fees. And we might recommend that the district attorney show leniency on the prison sentence. You agree to an uncontested divorce. You agree to zero alimony. You agree that the house belongs to Sienna." Grant looked at me. His eyes were wet, red-rimmed, pleading. He looked like a child who had broken a vase and wanted his mother to fix it. "Sienna, baby, please," he choked out. "Do not do this. Not here. Not in front of everyone. We can fix this. I can pay it back. I just need time." He reached for my hand. I pulled my hand back. I did not recoil in disgust. I simply removed myself from his reach. as if he were a customer trying to touch the merchandise without paying. I did not yell. I did not cry. I did not give him the satisfaction of seeing me break. I looked at him with the calm, terrifying serenity of winter glass. "Do not explain," I said. I pointed to the dotted line on the paper. "Sign." Grant looked at the pen. He looked at the police officers who had just stepped out from the security office, their hands resting on their belts. He looked at Sloane, who was now actively looking at her phone, disassociating from the wreckage of his life. He realized then that there was no charm left to use. There was no lie big enough to cover the truth on that screen. His hand shook as he took the pen. He bent over the marble counter, the same counter where he had met his mistress, the same counter where he had started this war, and he signed his name. He signed away the house. He signed away the money. He signed away his marriage. When he finished, he dropped the pen. It rolled across the marble and fell to the floor. Sarah Jenkins picked up the audit packet. Vivian picked up the settlement. Graham Pritchard stepped forward. He nodded to the security team. "Mr. Caldwell is no longer a guest of this hotel," Graham said. "Please escort him off the property. If he returns, he is to be arrested for trespassing." 2 large security guards moved in. They did not touch him roughly, but their presence was absolute. They flanked him. Grant looked at me one last time. "You ruined us," he whispered. I looked at him, and I felt a weight lift off my chest, a weight I had been carrying for months. "No, Grant," I said softly. "I just balanced the books." He was led away. He walked through the lobby, past the staring donors, past the whispering staff, and out through the revolving doors into the cold night. Sloane followed him out, not walking with him, but 10 feet behind, already typing a text message to someone else. The doors spun to a stop. The lobby was quiet for a heartbeat. Then, the string quartet, professionals to the end, began to play again. The conversation resumed, a little louder this time, fueled by the drama they had just witnessed. Vivian looked at me and winked. She tapped the folder. "I will file this in the morning," she said. "You are a free woman. Sienna. And a rich one. Once we liquidate his crypto wallet." I nodded. "Thank you. Vivian." Graham Pritchard walked over. He handed me a glass of champagne. He did not say congratulations. He did not say I'm sorry. He clinked his glass against mine. "To the Director of Operations for the Southern Region," he said. I took the glass. I looked at the bubbles rising to the surface. "To the Director." I repeated. I took a sip. It tasted like victory. It tasted like cold, clean air. I turned and looked at the lobby. My lobby. The lights were glowing gold. The guests were happy. The system was running perfectly. I was 37 years old. I was divorced. I was alone. And I had never felt more complete. I walked through the crowd, nodding to the staff, checking the floral arrangements, adjusting a napkin on a passing tray. I was not someone's wife anymore. I was not a victim of infidelity. I was the woman who had turned betrayal into proof, and proof into power. I walked toward the elevators, ready to go up to the suite not to cry, but to pack for Charleston. The doors opened. I stepped inside. As the doors closed, shutting out the noise of the gala, I caught my reflection in the mirrored wall. I did not smile. I did not need to. The manager was off duty, and Sienna Rogers was just getting started. Thank you so much for listening to this story. I would love to hear where you are tuning in from. So please leave a comment below and share your thoughts. If you enjoyed watching justice be served, please subscribe to the channel Leona Revenge Stories, like this video, and hit the hype button so more people can hear this story.